Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Hallelujah.
We gather today to stop and think, what is important about today? What's the focus of today? And really the question we need to ask is, what does resurrection mean to me? Not just to all other people, not to people of centuries, not to people of the first century, but really let's bring it home, let's bring it to ourselves, let's really ask that question, what does the resurrection mean to me? We've asked the question a number of times, and always get a great response from the choir. What was the first words that Jesus said when he came out of the tomb? Ta-da! Thank you, Nancy. What does the resurrection mean? It means life's changed. Go back to that first century. For those people, suddenly it changed. It's life, but it's changed. Good Friday was a tragic event. It was a heartbreaking event. It was a devastating event. The Lord of life, the King of kings, the one all hopes were placed on, was dead. The disciples were scattered. They were in hiding. Saturday must have been awful. But then suddenly on that first morning, that first day, they find the tomb empty. And now their life has changed. The resurrection is true, and death now has changed. Death is still death, but it's changed. It doesn't mean the same thing. You see, Jesus Christ changes everything. He changes life. He changes death. He changes the perspective that we have of both of them. So he changes both, right here, right now, just as he rose from the dead, right where we're at today. The resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead literally changes everything. It changed everything on that day for the people who kept their distance from God. It changes today for the people who still keep their distance from God, disappointed in their ambition, dissatisfied with other people, and despairing about the possibility of finding real meaning in life. The resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead changes all that. And if you haven't realized it, that's why there are certain groups in the world who hate Christians and are trying to eliminate them, annihilate them, and kill them, because the message of Jesus Christ changes everything. Jesus Christ died. He really died. He was buried. And Jesus Christ rose from the dead. He really came to life again. That's the message of Christianity. These are the facts to be accepted for what they are, or to be dealt with by those who refuse to accept the facts. The facts cannot be evaded. Even though there have been various attempts over many centuries to explain the facts away. So what does the resurrection mean to me personally? I have to look at the facts, and then I have to say to myself, stop theorizing, look at the facts. Jesus died, and he rose from the dead for me. That's what the resurrection means to me. And to everyone. Whether you realize it or not, he died and he rose for you. Now I look back at that first Easter morning. Here were people like us, mostly down to earth, unwilling to believe anything beyond their noses, forced to face the facts by events that are now history. Reluctantly, they had come to the conclusion that Jesus had really died. They had faced the stark facts about his death. Jesus didn't escape death. Jesus didn't evade death. After all he had said, that he was the Messiah, that he was the sent one of God, that he was the one, he died. He was absolutely amazing. And even his opponents were amazed. They said, if you are the Christ, come down from that cross, save yourself. They were suggesting that if he did, they might possibly believe in him. But still, Jesus went his way. He followed the Father's plan, and he died. Nobody needs to convince me or anyone else that Jesus Christ died. Martin Luther had to find it out for himself. Each of us has to learn it for himself or herself. And like Luther, we're dealing not just with religious truth, but we're dealing with the deepest facts of life, including not only the nature of God, but also our own personal life and our making. When Jesus Christ then rose from the dead, he made it absolutely clear from now on that he is a part of everything his people are and everything his people do. We Christians are at our best when we allow him to be the gracious head of everything and follow his direction as the head of his body, which we call the church. No one who follows Christ can escape a 180-degree turn. You see, turning from oneself is very difficult, especially for us religious folks. It means that when we have to turn, that turning to God for peace and power is the only way to do it because he's the only one that can give it. It's turning away from our own stupid ambitions that invariably waste life and terribly disappoint us in the search for power, seeking to dominate the lives of other people and invariably turning to dust in the hands of the searcher. So we have to ask today, what does the resurrection mean to me personally? It means to me what it meant to Paul, my favorite passage in Romans. No one lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. If we live unto the Lord. If we die unto the Lord. So whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord's. But you know what? The world is not disposed to believe this good news. Life simply can't be as good as we make it out to be. When a piece of sacred good news comes along, the world is so saturated with its own gloom that it searches for the rotten seed that it feels must be in there somewhere. Just watch when something happens. The press tries to tear it all down. They like to destroy it. They like to make it false. But now the resurrection changed everything. By the testimony of the same people who saw him die and heard his last words in those dying hours, Jesus Christ rose from the dead. The women performed the last rites, if you would, of preparing his body for burial, but they did so only in a preliminary way, since the three stars had already begun to appear, announcing that Passover Sabbath. A time when work, even of burying the dead, had to come to a stop because it was forbidden by Jewish law. Their piety, the women's piety, was matched only by the stark reality that it all would overcome them. This is life as it actually is lived in our own countryside, is lived in our own homes. When death invades, it hits like a ton of bricks. It overwhelms us. It crushes us. You see, when death invades our homes, when death invades our families, it destroys dreams. And what is left is not a dream. You remember 2 disciples found that out that same afternoon, walking along the road to Emmaus with their long faces. And so did 2 others that day, Peter and John, who went out to find to see for themselves and to verify the reports coming to them from all sides, or to disprove them once and for all. John tells us what he saw looking into the tomb. John said he saw grave clothes. The main piece that had been wrapped around the body was now lying a little apart from this dira, and that's the part that covered the head. Everything was as it had been on Friday except for one thing. There was no body there. It was as they themselves had suggested by their hesitancy to believe it was too good to be true, because people don't rise from the dead. It's illogical, it's unreasonable. But in all his humanity, Christ rose from the dead. Before he died on that cross, he was 100% human. He was 100% God. When he rose from the dead, he was 100% God, and he was 100% human. The man who died on Good Friday rose from the dead on Easter Sunday. It's the only conclusion that really faces the facts. Faith in the resurrection of Jesus Christ runs counter to the skepticism of the world, but it is not foolish. Faith in Christ takes into account the facts of human life and of human history, the foremost of which both life and subsequent history have provided the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Perhaps no one in all of the history of Christianity understood both the facts and the hesitation better than Martin Luther. Through the power of the gospel, convincing him of the actions of God and the resurrection of Christ, Luther became that robust man that he was. And Luther's understandings of humanity rested squarely on the gospel of Jesus Christ, the answer of God to skeptical twists and turns that take so much time and eventually prove so fruitless. Now, into all of this gloom comes the good news of God in Jesus Christ, telling me, as it tells you, that what it means to be justified by grace through faith alone in Jesus Christ, who was crucified for all and raised from the dead, that we might be at peace with God. So there's hope in Christ. If you do not want to take all of this from me, I want you to hear what Jesus said. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. No one goes to the Father except through me. I am the resurrection, he says. I am the life. Sometimes even God's own people give you the impression they don't believe that Jesus is really alive. Only because of Jesus' death and resurrection, though, there is hope. Our hope is not in the church. Our hope is in Jesus Christ, the Lord and the Master of the church. So let's ask him, what does the resurrection mean to me? It means hope. What does the resurrection mean to me? It means joy and peace beyond all understanding. What does the resurrection mean to me? It means that my life has meaning and purpose even when I feel lost and I feel helpless. What does the resurrection mean to me? It means that because Jesus lives, I will live also. Just part of that time is going to be on the earth. What does the resurrection mean to me? It means that one day I will see Jesus face to face and will be able to bow before him with joy and gladness for all of time, all of eternity. What does the resurrection mean to me? It means that all of the people that I have known, all of the people that I will ever know who have faith in Jesus Christ will be gathered together at the greatest banquet feast ever put together. What does the resurrection mean to me? It means that Jesus lives. It means that Jesus indeed has ascended. It means that Jesus is coming back. It means that right now, today, each one of us has worth and value. What does the resurrection mean to me? It means that the past is gone and new life has begun. The past is gone. New life